Jim Marlowe.
Present.
Bert Gentry.
Present.
Tim Atkinson.
Present.
Okay, today we have, under new business, the Hands of Hope grant discussion. And I've been in discussion with Troy,
Hello, Commissioner.
Troy Bennett, and I've asked Troy if he would, Mayor, to explain everything about this grant. We do have Kim Meyer on the phone. Kim is our auditor. And so if we have any questions, we can refer to her or anyone else, or Kelly's here, and or Celeste. So if you would.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Thanks for having us. My name is Troy Bennett. I'm the directing pastor at Community Faith Church in Marion, the founder of the Hands of Hope Foundation. But more important, we're here today. We have a separate organization called the Heron House of Hope. It is an organization started about 9 years ago with a vision to create a service ministry to the Williamson County area. It's based in Heron. It serves the entire Williamson County area and actually beyond these days. And so we started that 9 years ago with the vision. 8 years ago, we began to start serving people. Actually, it took about a year to renovate the Illinois Cafe building that we're in now. We did that with the first big community gathering, raised the money to do that. We started serving in 2012, and our birthday is always in September. So as of our birthday last year, we had served our first 250,000 meals. In addition to that, we do a GED program. We have a food pantry. We have a thrift store. Several other programs going on, recovery programs, things like that. In those first 8 years, 250,000 meals, pretty good for an organization basically composed of the area churches. Our organizations in the area support us, and basically it's just a massive non-for-profit that's really turned out to be a real success story in the community. So just to give you a little bit of homework here, just prior to COVID-19, like I said, we'd served about 250,000 meals. When the declaration happened, about February 28th, when it looked like it was going to happen, I talked to our Mayor Patini, who's here. This is also Tracy Lake. She's the business administrator for Community Faith Church. She has done all of our grant writing and done all the work on this as well. But I talked to our mayor to say, hey, what are we going to do? Will we shut down next week? Are we going to be an essential service? And we just had a conversation. And the first thing the mayor said is, I don't know how we'll survive without this. So we created an essential services plan and decided to stay open and serve the community. And little did we know that community would grow massively. We have served in the first 8 years approximately 600 to 650 meals per week. That's a normal week for us. That's been pretty standard. What's amazing is in 2020, we served 71,454 meals, over twice what we normally serve. And we did that, with the jump from January, from March on. At one point in time, we were serving 2,700 meals a week in the height of the COVID thing. That was basically for us a 237% jump in our average weekly meals once we got to the heart of it. So we served a lot of meals last year. This year, just for a note, January to April, into April, we have served right now 14,000. Just took a note today, 14,000, looking for the note here, 14,937 meals. We're still 55.6% above our threshold. People are not completely back to normal. A lot of people are still out of work. They're still not recovered. So we are on track right now to serve somewhere in the neighborhood by end of year. We predict nearly 300,000 meals. So you can see how fast we're jumping. That has caused us to really have to dig in. And one of the things we did is, after working with the mayor, we began to strategize about how we can get additional funds. We've had many organizations, local groups step up and really help out. But one of the things the mayor did, first of all, was try to get us talking to the people. So I've talked to other public leaders, other of our representatives, and they all pointed directions. Fortunately, everybody points in one direction, typically to Kelly. She's the local expert. And I began talking to her in March, April, May. And to be honest with you, a lot of the relief was coming down very slow, and explaining how it would work was very slow. She dug into it after I bugged her, and she would send me links and stuff, and man, we chased them and followed them, and mayor put us on stuff. So we followed for different things. Some things we qualify for, some things we don't. But the best thing she put us on was a public assistance grant through IEMA, which had some FEMA support, Federal Emergency Management support. We applied for that in April, just like we planned, and we got a call from the Illinois IEMA guy, and he said, hey, I'm going to approve this, but the problem is all I've got is PPE. The one thing we didn't need was PPE. We're fortunate because Heron Hospital, people around us, the Hands of Hope Foundation, we had sufficient PPE. And I know it was very shortfall there, but we were blessed with that. So I said, really what we need is food and commodities and groceries is what we need. We were feeding at to-goes. At that point in time, we were feeding at a rate of 237% per week. And just throwing us. We spent 3 weeks just feeding, in addition to our people, we fed all the emergency medical services, not just at Heartland, not just at Heron Hospital, but we actually got requested and went over to Carbondale and to Murfreesboro. So we helped with relief dinners for the people doing providing and work like that as well. So we were really getting our tails handed to us. But I kept working with Kelly. We got into that one grant. The guy called us and use PPE. We need to-go containers, to be honest with you. They were double the cost of our meals. And he said, I just don't have that available yet. He says, I know it says that we have it, but I don't know how to give that to you yet. Nobody's figured this out. We'll get it figured out. And I'm sorry, we will call you back. So that kind of leads to the first email that I'm going to have Tracy give you. A lady by the name of Cheryl Franklin reached out to us, just to give you history of it. Cheryl was a contractor with IEMA, and she called us and said, everybody, your state rep, your state senator, your mayor, everybody, Kelly, everybody wants us to help the Heron House of Hope. And we actually have funds for you now. And I have been directed to come to you. She came in from Mississippi as a contractor to get you guys on the fast track to get help. So she met with us at the Heron House of Hope. Tracy was a part of that meeting, along with John Steve, our daily operations director. And we began to fill out the process for that. So what it was is they came to us and said, we want to help you and get this fast track. We read the preliminary stuff. Tracy's going to pass out to you a public assistance fact sheet on this grant. It was basically a reimbursement grant. It's not a grant for operation. It's to reimburse expenses already incurred. So we wouldn't be getting new money. They wouldn't be overseeing our organization. They were simply going to fund receipts for the work we're doing as an essential emergency food shelter. So we asked some questions of Cheryl when she was there. We read through the program facts. There's also a more detailed, what's the next thing you've got there? You've got there's a private non-for-profit declaration. So the first thing we asked her was, we're a non-for-profit. We are not the city. We're not the county. She said, good thing for you. There's going to be this one-time and a lifetime exception. The president at that time had declared, can we pass out that next one? Yeah, FEMA had made a declaration to protect you and us. We know you guys don't want to be running non-for-profits all the way to the county. We understand that. To be honest with you, we don't really want to be asking you. We feel like we should partner with you on these things. So, but this is extraordinary, guys. Every restaurant in our area is closed. Mayor's working hard to get us picnic tables, feeding people, supporting people. We're just all working together here. But the president had declared that private non-for-profits were eligible for this grant, specifically when they're doing work like we're doing, in the work. So she said, because of this declaration, I'm here to work with you to get you in line for that. She began to work with us. We felt very good about it. She met with me, Tracy, and John. But after that, she pretty much worked with Tracy. Tracy's the nuts and bolts. She's an accountant. She works for SIU and for my church. She's very good at this. And it's not a simple process. Tracy had to watch literally hour after hour of video to be checked off on. Then she had to go do compliance stuff, and then we had to get our organization cleared through IMA. We had to get a portal set up. Kelly's done all these things, so she understands. And this is all for the one grant, so there was a lot of work done. Then they got into documentation. So this is we're not requesting funds for a grant for the future. We're simply submitting expenses that we'd already expended, and they're reimbursable. So she had to provide documentation to each one of those receipts individually, and then documented by month. And so she has those summarized. They were submitted by PDF email to FEMA, and they probably about the size of the St. Louis phone book. That would be just January through July. So at the time, we were to submit January through July, and as soon as we got to the end of the year, we were to do a supplement August to December, which we did. What happened was we submitted that. Those grants collectively were, let's see what I got for you now. You got the FEMA. Would you give them the DR 449? Yeah. This is the overview of the actual grant that we were coming under. It's been annotated only by me where it mentions us, meaning non-for-profits, our kind of organization, and what it's for. And specifically, we would fall probably under a small project because it would be under $131,000. And it specifically would be under the category B of emergency protective measure based on the fact we were doing emergency food and hunger relief. So we went together with that, with conversation after talking with Kelly. We ended our conversation with Kelly way back in April, May, because she got us to the point, we got portal. We got to the next person, and she actually submitted, if you would show what you submitted the grant itself. The grant request, this is two parts. So the grant part one was January 20th operations to July. That's the code of what we were allowed to go back to. And it was for $72,043.21 of reimbursable expenses that they had already kind of gone through with us and approved. None of that's in question really here. The supplemental, which was filed at the end of the year, is an additional supplement of $37,930.34 for a combined total of $109,973.55 for FY 2020. And that falls in the small project category. That was submitted, and we heard, it was received, it was passed on from IMA to FEMA. FEMA said it was in process. October, the first check was coming. November, the first check was coming. December. In January, they said it's been approved, but their legal department picked it up. Some box had not been checked. So we get a call in February from Justice and a team that Kelly knows very well, IMA people, somebody from FEMA. And they said, we've got a problem. You're supposed to have a sponsored oversight agency, such as Williamson County, through Kelly. You could have it through the city, but you need that. We said, the first question we raised when Cheryl met with us back in June was, do we need to have this? She said, oh no, we had 4 reference letters already. The mayor had already written reference letter, our state rep, our state senator, all of them had written letters that we were essential. She said that everybody knows you're already approved. So we didn't offer anything else because we weren't asked for anything else. So what Justice told us, she said, we got a real simple problem here. She says, your paperwork is outstanding. Our paperwork is outstanding. We're not questioning your expenses. You just need somebody to pass the money through to you. That makes it appropriate based on our protocol. FEMA, I said, well, IMA said that wasn't required. We have our own portal. She said, well, the IMA contractor has been relieved of their responsibilities. And they have a bunch of people caught in our category. But we're calling you because your grant is actually perfectly filled out, ready to go. And what you basically need to do is get on the phone with Kelly. Kelly can fix this with a conversation with you. We can move the portal from you to them, and we can pass the full entire reimbursement to you through the county very easily. It could be done through Heron, but they're not set up for it at this point in time. And so that's where I got talking to Kelly, and we thought, well, this is very easy. So the last document is the eligibility of the grant, where they sent us denying us. And the denial is based on we don't have that box check of having that sponsored conduit organization. So basically, we've done everything we've been asked to do. And we were actually told the check was in the mail October, November, December, and January, and it got caught by a last desk. And actually, they're trying very hard to work with us. And so basically, they said, we need your permission to allow Kelly to step in, take all of our work. It will still be our work. It will still be to us, and simply let it pass through there to get to us. And Kelly can speak to how that's going to affect you guys and the financial responsibilities. We don't believe it is because it's a direct reimbursement based on specific expenses, and we think it's pretty clear. Mayor Kinney can speak to our conversations and his support for us and why we went to Kelly. We went to Kelly because honestly, she was the expert in the region, and she's been outstanding to work with. So I'd be glad to take questions. Tracy can take questions. I'm sure Mayor would be glad to answer anything you would have for us.
I don't have any questions right now. I think it's going to come down to our legal department take a look at this and make sure everything's fine, whatever. But I do have one question though. Who will be in charge of monitoring the grant?
Well, the grant itself it's not a forward grant. It's a reimbursement grant for what we've already expended. So once we're paid, we're being paid for it's like turning in a gas receipt. If you turned in a voucher for a meal, you're simply being paid for what we've been vouchered. So the material that we've submitted has already been approved as eligible. The problem is we're just not eligible without somebody to write the check for us. So in other words, we need Williamson County to act as our co-signer on it. there's not a grant to follow up on. There's no follow-up study. The expenses will be authorized. I think Ellie would understand that.
Yeah, so let me explain to you how this works. So I did a PA grant for us, the county as a whole. Hypothetically saying, if we did approve this and we allowed them to be under our grant, they would be, excuse me, sorry, I can't talk to this one. They would be no different than the state's attorney's office, the sheriff's office, the treasurers, the county clerks. We would just put them under another submission for House of Hope. We have 4 submissions so far under Williamson County, PA. The monitoring process is done by FEMA. Ours is still being monitored and still being, has been submitted. I can tell you that I talk to them on a daily basis, and they're very, very particular on the submission process and what they get. I've had to go back and, for instance, I talked to Jessica from Amanda's office several times on what exactly the use was for the PPE that she submitted. All of her stuff was mostly voting stuff, so I had to explain exactly what the barriers were used for, what dates they were used for, how they were used, what locations they were used for. So they are very adamant on turning exactly what it was used for. So the process of him giving me this information, it's going to be detailed. So it's not one of those situations where they're going to say, okay, here's our grant paperwork, it's on you. He's going to have a lot more work. And once that's under us, they're still going to be responsible for giving all that information to us to turn into FEMA, just like Amanda is responsible for giving, or her employee is responsible for giving that information to me. How, you know, just because I submit it, I still have to have the information, you know, exactly what it was used for. So FEMA is the one that, you know, monitors the actual grant, the reimbursement grant. So they want details. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Of exactly what it's been used for. They don't just say, oh, well, here's $130,000 that you're asking for. Well, here's your receipts. Okay, well, we'll give it to you. It's not that easy. It's not cut and dry. They want to know details and all that.
And to add to that, we've actually already submitted that, and they've actually already approved that stuff. It just got down to issuing the check, and when the compliance person looked at it, what we were missing was the sponsor. And I know as a leader, we're not trying to create a new level of work for you guys. We know you're very busy. We think this is extraordinarily special because, number one, you're not creating an exemption or special move for us. The president did, and the declaration did. We're just required to get that money to Williamson County. We need a partner to pass that through. So I think this is a unique circumstance for the president to do this and to have an authorization to do that. So I think that rests back up on that office, but it's a matter of getting resources to here. I can tell you, we are very strapped, and we're still serving at very high levels, and we can definitely use this to help us stay very operational. So
I would just say this, just for my own sake, speaking, is number one, you laid out a compelling case. You did your homework. It's my understanding that FEMA recommended Williamson County to go through. It's a flow through basically to you. I personally, there's 3 of us up here to make a decision, and only 3 of us. And I would never turn my back against something like Ants of Hope to try to help you out. So that's where I stand. As long as the legal expert here thinks everything's good, I will never be in your way of getting this done.
thank you.
Kim, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do. And you said Celeste is there, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Celeste, how are you?
Good, yeah.
Good. I have a question regarding the denial. The denial reads a little bit differently than I think what I heard. The applicant, which was the Hands of Hope, was denied because for the work to be eligible, and I'm quoting this from the denial, it must be legal responsibility of the applicant requesting the assistance. And they determined that there was no legal responsibility for the applicant to provide these meals. And so my question is, was there a legal responsibility for the county to provide meals?
Jim, Commissioner Marlowe, that was addressed in the process. When Justice spoke to us in the group meeting, the denial was, the question wasn't whether we should do it. The question was they didn't have the proper documentation that we were asked to do it. So the conversation came with the mayor prior to that would the household be needed to serve as an essential ministry to the community. In his conversation to us, he said absolutely, and authorized us to stay open. Actually, after the closure, we stayed open to serve just like EMS did. So we did it based on a verbal agreement, and we formalized it in letters of recommendation that went with the whole packet. The problem is it just didn't fit the box of what they were asking for. So Justice understood that we had partners that had asked us to do this at a area level, but we just had to go back and reset that. And even with that documentation, we still had to have an organization to go through. So basically, the mayor did that in a verbal conversation with me, and he's been more than glad to make that documented, but they were looking for the documentation that we were asked to do it. I agree with that. And then we need the partnership to do it through.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I make a comment?
Go ahead.
I would piggyback off of what Ms. Meyer mentioned earlier. First of all, I haven't had the pleasure to meet you before. This sounds like a wonderful organization that you're running, and it provides an essential service. I would not disagree with that to our community, and I personally am thankful that you're putting in all this work to make sure that our residents are taken care of. Unfortunately, I agree that the paperwork is important. And specifically, if you look at the last document that you gave us, which is from FEMA with their decision, if you turn it to page 3 and look at the bottom, it's the eligibility determination, which is what Ms. Meyer was hinting on. And it's just 2 sentences. I'll read it. It's very quick. It says the applicant's request for reimbursement for $72,043.21 for food and hot meal distribution is denied because FEMA considers the work performed as an ineligible increase operating cost and not eligible emergency work under the PA program. Now, I think you spoke to that and you said, well, we talked about that when we were trying to work with these people. If you look at the page 4, I guess, which is just on the other side, next to the signature of Philip Yu, I guess is how you say that, there's the date there. So this form was created February 12th of 2021. Basically, in my opinion, I would need to see something from FEMA or from another organization that essentially contradicts this. I mean, I think what I'm hearing from you is this decision is outdated and that you've had conversations since then. The problem I have is I don't have any documentation from later than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me make clear. That decision that you saw dated is their legal decision that triggered the phone call with us.
Mm-hmm.
In the phone call with all those partners on the phone call, they said the reason for that ineligibility had to do with the initial letter and then the conduit. They said if those things were in place, you would be eligible. So there wasn't a question whether we were eligible. The question is we needed to have Kelly involved and get the proper things done, and then they get back up, and that would change the eligibility totally. So, I mean, she spoke with Justice also after this, and they made that very clear to her that we just simply needed her involvement. She would get that rerouted, add to it the mayor's request, and then we would be in compliance and appropriate. So we believe we can get in compliance. They didn't speak to us till almost March because that was the legal letter, and then they set up the phone call with us, and then from there. So we believe we can become compliant with your support. We simply need Kelly to engage it, and she can bring us into compliance very easily. And the mayor's here to show that he's prepared to work with us to do that.
So Andrew, you would like for me to get something else in writing?
Kelly will be able to get that.
Okay.
When she enters into this conversation, Justice is going to tell her they're now in compliance.
Okay.
So we just need to give Kelly permission to advocate on her behalf. I believe she'll easily win. This is a win-win. She knows she can win this. They've already told us they want us to win it. It's just a matter of getting her there to get us eligible, to make us eligible. We would be eligible if those things were repaired.
Kim, do you have any other questions?
I understand.
A good question.
I do. In the paragraph above the eligibility determination paragraph, it says, for work to be eligible, it must be legal responsibility of the applicant requesting the assistance. So my question is, if the city of Heron was directing and asking for the meal to be served, then would it make more sense for the city of Heron to be the applicant, since that is where some of what you're saying is the legal authority came from? I don't know that the county, as the applicant, really had any legal responsibility to provide the meal. I think you would need a legal opinion of some kind that retroactively back to this time period that you had some legal responsibility to provide the funds, and would this problem be easily solved with going to the correct applicant?
Steve, didn't he just address this a while ago that you're not set up to do something like this?
Not at this level. We are doing similar grants for the private sector, other parts of the private sector, I should say. And with Celeste's guidance and help and administration on that sort of thing. Why I think it came this direction was because of the sourcing of those funds, the other similar type of grants that we are, let's say, underwriting or backing. From a whole different direction, this being emergency management type of funds, a logical course would be running it through the county's emergency management agency, which would be more knowledgeable of the specifics of this type of grant and some of the requirements there. And also for the manpower requirements would place on us along with all the other ones that we're doing.
That's what I thought you'd say earlier. So, okay.
Yeah, the logic was it's EMA money, let's route it that direction.
Okay.
Well, I think that probably the county's legal counsel is probably going to have to do a little bit more work on this to get to where the language here is met, unless there is something else in written form that relieves the burden of this language that we just don't have today. My other comment, when it comes to grant funds, I think, as we discussed, I don't know, I haven't done any follow-up in a little bit, but there was a federal award that would possibly be coming your way through a bill legislation signed by the president earlier in the spring. And that would, receiving that would put you in a situation of having to have a single audit for the grants. And please remember, a single audit is when you expend more than $750,000. It's not based upon the year of receipt. It is based upon the year of expenditure. So when you're using your identification number and you're expending receipt, even though, let's say you received $10 million in 1 year, if it takes you 5 years to spend that, and each one of those years is greater than $750,000, you will have a single audit every year based on when you expended the money, not when you received it. So what I'm getting at here is this money provided under a federal program, if your identification number is being used, it will be subject to single audit. It doesn't really matter who on the federal side is monitoring this. This will go through the single audit process on the independent auditor side, and sub-recipient monitoring. If someone is using your ID number, you are charged with the responsibility of sub-recipient monitoring. And that's why I mentioned Celeste. Celeste is familiar with this. And we've had to do that in the past. We've had to do some sub-recipient monitoring. And so you need to understand that when you're loaning out your identification number, there is a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And you have to make sure you're set up for that. And you are going to monitor grant reporting. You are going to monitor the use of funds. You are charged with that responsibility. It is just not, hey, they've done good work, they're good people, we trust them. That's not how it works. And so if you're going to do it in this case or in other cases, you have to make sure you have your system in place to do the required sub-recipient monitoring.
And that audit would be paid by the county.
Well, you would be engaging for the single audit. It would be your responsibility.
Right.
With loaning out the ID number comes some responsibilities that go with it.
And so that would come from the general fund.
Yes. Now, as I said, more than likely, if all of this presidential award process comes about, you're going to be in single audit territory
Right.
through probably 2024,
Anyway.
depending on when you expend the funds.
Right.
Okay?
Mhm.
But do you have a process set up for appropriate sub-recipient monitoring? So,
Yeah,
but I think
that's a
maybe the
question.
first focus might be looking at reading the language for it is what it is, and then seeing is there something else that you can provide the county's legal counsel to somehow waive this legal responsibility that the applicant has, which would be Williamson County government, if I'm hearing everything correctly, that somehow the county, that legal requirement isn't there for the county to be required to provide the meals. So all we have right now is the black and white language to work with, and I think we probably need to work on a little bit more on solutions here.
So I think if I'm hearing everything correct, basically then, Mr. Bennett needs to provide Andrew the information that he's looking for, the documentation that you're looking for, that you stated earlier.
I think the easiest way for us to do that is even provisionally to allow Kelly to, we can't enter back into the conversation without Kelly and somebody knowledgeable. Justice has already engaged this, but we need permission to go further. I think in the conversation, she could tentatively get that easily for us, that this would be cleared and set aside with that relationship. As far as the audit, it's not our goal for the Heron House of Hope to cost this county anything at all. We were simply trying to receive something already provided to Williamson County for us. And so we would be glad to stipulate up front, if there's any cost to audit based on our share, you could withhold, escrow, whatever needed, that amount of cost to offset that. We're not trying to take from you. We just want to make sure we have enough money to feed the citizens that we feed in the future.
No, I
So
get it.
we don't want it to cost them
What
anything.
Mark is saying is that there's a possibility
I
that
know, I hear that. I share
we
that.
may surpass that anyways.
Yes.
And I was gonna ask,
Okay, and I have one more thing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Brent, do you want to go ahead?
no, go ahead.
Okay, so on the last page, or of, I guess it would be page 4 of 5 of the determination letter, the right to appeal expires within 60 days of the determination. So is there a process that waives that requirement as well?
We have a right to appeal. What we were told was we would have to do this appeals process. However, if Kelly's able to step in before that, they're willing to reroute this and put it back in process. So this would be our route to determine that we could do this solo. But they're saying that's not going to work regardless. And so as long as we can enter into that, they can report it, redirect it, and it was a relatively administrative type move. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is an email address, Luke Denny, that maybe your legal counsel can reach out to and talk about how to overcome these issues. Celeste, did you have any thoughts on the sub-recipient monitoring
I have a
requirement?
lot of thoughts. We're talking about a charitable organization here that's doing good work in the community, and I think the county should be more than willing to sponsor this activity. In all the COVID documentation that we've been receiving, the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of stuff, there is a line in there that says state and local governments are allowed to transfer funds to nonprofit organizations. So I would think if they're already submitting all of their paperwork for all their expenditures in order to be approved, then it would just be a matter of getting the check, turning it around and giving it to them, because what they provided was the documentation for that money to the state. So the state's reviewing it and approving it and issuing the check to us to give to them. It'd be over. $75,000 It's not gonna make that much difference in a single audit when we have all this other money coming.
I personally say that you've done your case, and I'm impressed with it. I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. I thought,
I do too.
so that's great. All right. So,
We do this all the time.
Can I
when
say
we-
something?
Yeah.
Our sponsors for other people with grants.
Andrew, is there any way that you and I can sit down and talk to, what's her name?
Justice.
Justice, sorry. I talk to a million people a day, especially over food, lately especially. Maybe we could sit down and we could talk to her and then we can figure out how the right way to do this is, because I have a gazillion grants going on
Sure,
and I want to do it the right way.
absolutely, and.
Because I do believe that there is a right way. With that being said, him and I have a huge partnership with food, and this is something that it took everything I've got in the last year to get down here. And I have 2 trailers coming down in the near future for more food. And we have a need in this region. It's huge,
It's huge.
and he's done a huge job. And this is something that's huge in our region.
I don't think that myself nor Ms. Meyer are disputing that. We're not saying that you guys aren't doing a great job and you're not providing a wonderful service to the community that is desperately needed.
Right. But
I want to see this go through too.
Amen.
To use the analogy here, making a mountain out of a molehill, look, if you guys just want to ram this through, ram it through. I don't get
I
a
don't
say on
think
this.
so.
Hold
I
on,
just
please.
think
Hold
I
on,
need
hold
your
on just a second. Hold on. I don't get a say in this. I don't vote. These 3 individuals vote on this. My job is just to say whether your ducks are in a row and your boxes are checked. So all I'm saying is there's a box that's not checked here. And coming from the determining agency, they're not necessarily saying it's totally because the applicant didn't have the legal responsibility and they're not coupling with a government entity. If you read the paragraph, we could agree, we could couple this, we could do it, and this could still be denied. My only concern in all of this is just making sure that there's no harm that comes to the county. And you know what? There may not be. If this is a situation where this board agrees and says, let's go forward, and you guys put in all the time and the effort and do the paperwork, and they come back and they still deny us, what harm is there to the county? You know, maybe there's some ancillary costs and things like that. I get that, but again, my job's to go through and make sure the boxes are checked, the I's are dotted, and the T's are crossed. I'm not saying that I'm against this at all.
And hence, that's why I had this meeting
I agree.
for everybody, for your benefit.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah.
The state's going
Yeah,
out of the
no,
way.
I think that it's obviously great work that these folks do, and they stepped up.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's denying that.
And I think the work, stands for itself on what they've done. The reason I'm bringing up my concern is that based upon what I'm reading, if you change the applicant name to just Williamson County government, the denial is still going to be there based on this language. And so I'm trying to bring up suggestions of how to make this workable rather than just hitting denial after denial after denial.
that's not,
So if
That's
we
not the
can
issue.
that's not what
find
you're
That's
a
not the
way
issue.
That's not
That's not what
it,
they're
though.
saying.
And that's why I
Now,
suggested we
come back.
sit down.
and give a path here to success, I just don't know that changing the applicant name is really going to be the end all be all to success here.
I don't think that's what they're saying. Troy, go ahead.
I've been a pastor for 32 years. I'm telling you exactly what the conversation was with Justice. I know she's confirmed that with her. They called us and asked us to go through the process. They came back in even at the denial and said, we just need to fix these things for you. We want to help you with this. Everybody wants to help us. So we're not asking for an exception here. They're telling us how to fix it. And we just need to let Kelly work with whoever to do that.
Well, then that would be my recommendation, is that Kelly get with Andrew and
Accept
work
that.
this out.
What's your
And
time frame for it?
Well, I mean, we're operational now. This is reimbursing us for expenses in the past. So,
How much time do you have?
well, there's a 60-day window on this, and it took us about 30 days to get this meeting. So we're getting far into this, very deep into this. And so I need to make sure she can pull it back over, which they said she could.
So Kelly's immediate help is what you're looking for.
Absolutely. If you would turn her loose, I think it'll solve all, we'll either be eligible or not eligible. If they don't make us eligible, that's
So
fine.
she can go in there and handle the compliance.
And and they're not switching it to Williamson County. We will still be the agency that's being given to. We've got our own portal and stuff. It's just the way the rule guidelines got to come
If
through.
I'm understanding, the worst thing that could happen is that you would be turned down.
Yes.
You'd be denied. Okay.
I think Andrew could.
Sure. So it's not directly to you. It would be sent to Williamson County, and then Williamson County would then reimburse you.
Agreed, but it's still based on our organization's qualifications, which have been fully vetted.
Well, when you partner, you have to enter into a partnership agreement with Williamson County. And then what they're going to do is they're going to vet the legal responsibility of Williamson County first and foremost. It's basically like if you were going to go buy a car, and this is a very rudimentary example. And let's say for whatever reason, you didn't have the down payment, you didn't have the credit score, you had to get a co-signer or an applicant. And that's essentially what they're wanting you to do. They're wanting Williamson County to co-sign on this with you, except for Williamson County's name will be at the top of it. The one question I had is, you talked about that 60-day window. When did you have the conversation with the person that told you you had a 60-day window?
That conversation was about 20 days before we got this letter.
This letter right here?
Yeah, so that letter wasn't issued immediately then, but it came, she said you would be getting a letter. In the meantime, I would like to work with Kelly to get this thing redirected and reset up. And have all the
My concern is this letter is dated February 12th. 60 days from that is already passed.
No, 60 days from me receiving it, is what it said on when we got it certified, so.
Okay, all right, what date did you get the letter, receive it in the certified mail?
Gosh, I can't tell you that.
Was it in March? Was it in April?
Was it in April? Is it April?
What was it in February, March,
No,
April? Do you know the month?
It was 30 days ago. Within 30 days.
So about 30 days ago, okay.
Yeah, that sign off was the final legal sign off that kicked it back to that meeting. So that was in process. They were just trying to get past having to send that. And then they sent it. And so it started from the date I received it and signed for it.
Sure.
I kept that document, but I don't have it.
And just to clarify, I'm not saying that I distrust you in any way at all. You're a very honest person. My thing is, based on the paperwork I have in front of me, the last date that I have is that February date. And so 60 days from that obviously is well past.
It's not 60 days from that date. It's
So-
60 days from the date of our receipt.
Karen Duffy did not sign this until 3/8.
It didn't get in our hands till mid-April.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason I brought the mayor here was I realized we got the issue of agency behind us and how we got started. His presence here is to show you that we're all in this together. This was,
I mean, I think we're clear here what we're gonna do. So Kelly and Andrew are gonna work together. They're gonna come up with whatever you all come up with. And then everything's gonna move forward. And if there's some kind of audit issue down the road, you're more than willing to pick up the tab on the audit or
Absolutely.
whatever. I don't
see a downside.
I don't see anything about this. These two folks, you're on time sensitive matter,
we're very,
30 days.
very,
These two need to talk to whoever y'all need to talk to,
Andrew,
and let's get it done,
I think
one way or another.
After you and Kelly talk, just address each one of us.
Sure.
Is this something that the board needs to vote on? I know I brought this to the board, and this is why I brought it to the board, because I didn't want to do something.
Well, I think the board would need to vote on this because it's not something that somebody, not any one of us can just say, yay,
I didn't
If the
know
county's
because public
partnering,
assistance goes through emergency management, so I didn't know. Is it something
Well,
that the board
they
needs
have
to
to-
vote? Okay,
Because they would be sponsoring.
I didn't know.
So it's just like any other application that we submit on behalf of someone. So we'd be submitting this application on behalf of them. And their participation agreement is standard in those kind of situations.
so let these two work it
Yeah,
out.
that's it.
And,
It's either you're really gonna get it or you're not, that's the bottom line. Celeste, have you ever helped any non-profit organizations in Grant, right?
No.
Okay.
All right, so these two, it's between these two now, and
So then you'll get back to us as quick as you can.
you got a legal beagle.
All right.
thank you, Dolly.
All right, well, thank
Thank you.
you. Kim, did you have any final questions before they leave?
I do not.
Okay, all right. then.
Anybody else have anything to say before we finish this part out?
Okay, well, appreciate you.
Oh, I saw that.
Everybody
Excellent.
get this Monday?
Yeah.
And what kind of-
Mayor, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, good to see y'all.
There's an answer if you want to.
We have one more item.
This is, as I read it, Celeste can tell me if I'm wrong, like we did a grant application in the city on behalf of our different entities in town and so forth. And as much as anything, it took an action of our council to enter into it. Each applicant we had to approve, all that. And I think it's more of the higher echelons as a recourse if something does go wrong with it. then it comes back to the city to make it whole. But the qualification to be able to be eligible, to meet the requirements and so forth like that, is what we reviewed. In this particular case, the money's been spent for hours. They have to be in business for another 60 days after the application process and so forth like that. So that's really about one of the very few ways that our applicants could default, which would fall back to the city. I suspect that's why this mechanism is similar to what we're doing on the other grants like that. But this one to me is, the money's been spent, the documentation's there, so the exposure that the county would have is basically zero, because they will have met all the criteria for the good of the people that want to adopt all that, and for the time period required. We are supporting everything the House of Hope has done in our community and our region, because they've really reached out, and they've met tremendous need and an ongoing need, and have affected a lot of lives and families. So we will be supporting in whatever ways it's appropriate for us to do so. So thank you all for your consideration.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Take care. Sure. Stephanie, you make copies for everyone here. Okay, moving on. I've asked Cody both to be here. Last Friday, we had a board meeting at the airport. It was in an attempt to discuss the possibility of getting a jet service to Chicago. Cody, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. So the meeting that we had, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
The meeting that we had last Friday was just to try and get everyone in the area that might benefit from this potential air service up to date. Started about a year ago, I guess, prior to really COVID setting in the region. But the goal was a working relationship between the City of Carbondale, City of Heron on a project that would benefit both cities and really all of Southern Illinois. So we settled on the potential for air service to Chicago. The airport, of course, has, I believe that was last spring as well, went through the process of reapplying for federal funds. Ultimately, they made the decision to use those funds to re-up the Cape Air and then add the Nashville service as well. One of the bidders in that process was a company called SkyWest, who is a United Airlines operator. They operate 50 seat jets, mainly out west, given the namesake, but they also had proposed a 50-person jet to Chicago. O'Hare would be about 50 minutes wheels up and wheels down from Marion Airport to Chicago. Early morning flight to Chicago, late evening flight return to Chicago, and that would be a daily service 7 days a week. So potential there is huge. Just thinking about, I don't know if any of you all travel to Chicago, but the potential is there. But to solidify that, to solidify our argument, we know that we're going to have to argue for funds to make this happen. They needed $1.6 million a year. SkyWest did at the time. They are still interested at that number in order to subsidize these flights to get these ticket prices kind of in a competitive window. That window would be about $85 to $90 each way, plus taxes and fees and so on. So for $85 plus tax, 50 minutes to Chicago, obviously that brings a lot of hope and economic, hopefully future prosperity to our region. So in order to procure that money, we knew that we couldn't turn to the federal government. So we kind of launched that conversation with Senator Fowler, Representative Severin, and Memphis Lake, Representative Wentworth, as well as the governor's office, and they are all on board and all eager to see this project through. We have had a couple of conversations with DCEO, who would be the conduit for which these funds would be made available. There used to be a program through IDOT called iFly that would provide subsidies like this. That project ended several years ago. So the conduit that they've kind of turned to now would be DCEO. And my understanding is they would release these funds probably to Veterans Airport to go out seek bids, award a contract. And so what we asked for from all of our partners that were at that meeting last week was for a letter of support. I think Commissioner Marlowe had given you a couple copies of just some samples that we provided. But in this process, we had asked Simpo to do a study just to see what kind of potential this has. They found that they basically took 2019 data, 2020 of course was mainly a wash, but they took 2019 data and found that about 700,000 unique visits between Chicago and Marion Carbondale area happen every year. 700,000 people go back and forth. Of those, about 615,000 of those come down. The other 75,000 go up. And so the potential for our region is much more than the potential for the Chicago region. So that's why we have to make this argument here locally, because Chicago's, in theory, losing money for folks coming down here to either visit, Shawnee National Forest, line trails, whatever they do down here, and obviously with Walker's Bluff on the horizon, hopefully those numbers would expand even in the future. So if we can get somebody down here for a weekend for $160 each way, we've accomplished something. They're staying in our hotels or even at our restaurants. They're spending their money down here. From a tourism standpoint, the potential is huge there. So we're asking for letters of support on how this would affect your organization. Obviously, the county as a whole. I would think tourism would be a component of that. The hotel tax, some different things would definitely fall into play, I would think. Commissioner Marlowe asked that I also speak on what we believe, as you all are well aware of different grants, there's usually a local component match. We've not been told of such blatantly, but in a couple of conversations on the back burner that we've had with DCEO and some of the governor's staff, they have hinted at the possibility for a local match. In that case, we would probably not apply for the 1.6 million. We would probably apply for about 2 million. 400,000 of which, or 20%, we would presume would be our local match in that ballpark, give or take a little bit. And of that 400,000 local match, we would, in theory, use those on in-kind type purchases, like advertising in the Chicagoland area. Come to Southern Illinois, enjoy a long weekend, visit Walker's Bluff. I think Cindy Bunch was at that meeting. She said they already have some billboards and that kind of stuff deployed up there. And so there's a real potential there. She sees that potential there. So far, since Friday, we've gotten about 25 letters of support from various organizations, mayors, private organizations, and the like. And so we're not asking for money at this point. Don't know that we will ask for money at this point. We don't know that 20% match is going to be there. But at this stage, in order to get to a point where we understand what the match would be, if there is one, we need to get this approved in concept, and a letter of support would go a long way in helping us in that process.
Cody, I got one question
Yeah.
for you. The local match.
Yeah.
The letter of support doesn't bind us in any way for a local match.
In no way.
Yeah.
In no way would that bind you to coming to the table with any money at all for that. This is just in theory. This is how it would benefit our organization. Please consider granting.
I can see this benefiting the entire region,
Yeah, absolutely.
not just Marion, Carbondale, but everyone,
Absolutely.
this whole corridor,
Yeah.
all Southern Illinois.
Yeah, I know the Walker's Bluff people really want this.
Yeah.
For sure.
These two templates, that's all they are, just a template. I would like to see personally that the entire county board sign off on one. This doesn't require a vote, I don't believe, just a head nod. I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts?
Which is send it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've said, when they're back and forth, Cape Air and this.
Yeah.
It's a real risk to take on Chicago and lose everything Cape Air had.
Yeah.
So my gut leaned toward Cape Air, not that I had a vote.
Yeah.
But, because you know what you got. You know the track, you know the track record. But once you get that located in hand, then you try to get the third one up there. Yeah, and this is not a thing, I don't think, to pick up the students from SIU, because they're gonna take the Amtrak. I mean, because it's a heck of a lot cheaper. you know, but, the 200 round trip or 2-something plus tax,
This would be right in that neighborhood, and I think the last time I looked at Amtrak, it was about 160, 170 round trip.
yeah,
So,
high now.
yeah, so it's,
Yeah.
It's comparative.
yeah, it's
But
not.
Once you don't have
Then you
14
look at the
And
time.
you've got 4 hours.
And I think something that I like is that if I understood you correctly, it's landing here in the evening.
Yeah, it would land here in the
So
evening,
if they're coming from Chicago, they're gonna be staying in our motels.
Out of these two, the longer one or the shorter one? Sometimes,
Content is always good, so, and uniqueness is always good. So if you have a special,
does he need any money, Mo?
yeah, it doesn't matter.
We'll let Jim decide. We'll
So we've let Jim write the news.
That's fine.
And, okay, Jim, you have your marching orders.
Whatever you want to decide. It's not the same stuff.
So you'll sign it, I'll sign it, and we'll sign
And
it.
our process is just, you can email that, scan that in, email that to me. We're gonna give those to Representative Severin on Friday. And then when he's back in session, I believe on Monday next week, he will take those, hand deliver those. And
What about other office holders too?
we've got, all the mayors have signed off here in Williamson County. Of course, Representative Whitworth, Representative Severin, Senator Fowler,
What about our circuit clerk, should she sign up?
any county.
County clerk, I'm sorry.
Anyone,
He's a new guy. He's all right.
anyone that you, and that would be true of anyone that you are aware of in business that could benefit from this, any of your personal contacts that you think could benefit with this, just shoot that email to them and.
I already
Take all we can.
Have you started-
area with some
Yeah.
others that
Yeah.
that are in the hotel business.
Excellent,
And
yeah,
ask them to pass it on to
Yeah.
anyone they may know.
yeah, because you're exactly right, they're gonna either restaurants, they're gonna stay in our hotels, or they're gonna go spend money at Walker's Bluff or wherever else, and it's gonna be, if we can capture,
To extend the contract for 15 minutes, press 1.
they basically said that the propensity to fly, that's a technical term, but it's really sounds fancy, but that propensity to fly would be somewhere between 1 to about 7.5% of that 700,000 figure. They think that there would be about 20 to anywhere between 10 and about 25,000 enplanements every year. And as that increases, as Walker's Bluff gets going, as some other development hopefully takes off in Southern Illinois, and those numbers go up, at 1.6 million annual subsidy would go down in theory, because they're garnering more revenue with more flyers. So,
And we're wanting to get this, the idea was to get this presented to the governor prior to them starting their
this month,
budget.
yeah.
budgeting.
Yeah, so
we can get that in.
the budget's usually passed on the state level, if
Correct.
not on May 31st, they're within a couple of days, and so we basically got a month now.
So,
We need to get it up.
I
to
will,
this
get this letter drafted, and I'll have a spot for all three of us to sign.
Okay.
And then I'll get this over to you.
Excellent, we appreciate your support.
You know, like I said, I've always said from the get-go, beside the business aspect, man, I could see us just taking that, go see a Cub Cardinal game or something.
Absolutely,
Take an Uber to the game, take an Uber back to the airport,
Yeah.
come home at night.
Absolutely.
And that's save you 12 hours of driving.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that, at least from my perspective, that I find unique, we know what, I agree with you, we know what we've got with the Cape Air service, but in theory, those people are leaving our area. With the Chicago service, and what the data they've provided, these people will be coming to our area.
Correct.
And so that's why I think this is a slam dunk for us.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Well, that, it's a jet, so it's even
Yep,
faster.
50 passenger jet.
Yeah, I mean, you drive,
It'll be much more
it's 5 hours, you take the train, it's 5 or 6 hours.
Correct.
Was that the same company that was here years ago, SkyWest?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm talking like 20 years ago. They did some stuff, or maybe it's just the football team flying on SkyWest. I remember SkyWest coming
Well,
in.
they did mention in
Was going to.
02 or 08 that
Yeah,
there was
Legion, and I think
it was like
SkyWest
a 1-year service to Chicago.
Sunshine, I think, is, I think that was the jet that was there whenever we had our meeting.
Allegiant,
No, Sunshine
okay,
Airlines.
Okay.
They were taking the SIU.
yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
So, okay. If nobody else has anything to say, Andrew?
I'm just, this is just personal curiosity.
Yeah.
One, any 50 passenger jet versus the Cape airplanes, and smaller private jets, any modifications going to need to be made to the airport?
The only modifications will be, they'll need an extra terminal, basically. They will convert that space that we were in, which is, I think they call that the commercial flight lounge or something like that. They will convert that into an extra terminal. I believe he said, Doug Kimmel at the airport said that was about $120,000 venture to get that, which would, of course, be included in the local match as well. That would be a portion of that 20%.
Okay. I had a call from a friend the other day that retired at Indianapolis. He worked the tower in the radar room, and he was there 35 years. He just wanted me to say that if you've got any questions on anything he could help, just because he retired.
Yeah.
You know, like the ramp. Is there going to be a ramp that's going to go up? People have to walk outside. Is there going to be a ramp like you do at a regular airport? You're going to drop you into the jet. He goes, what's the grand plan? I said, I have no idea. And he goes, oh, I talked about it. He goes, I'm able to get you 2 free ones from Indianapolis. So I can shoot you a number. You may all pick his brain. This guy's sharp.
Well, then you probably need to go to the airport board.
Doug.
Yeah, again, Doug will have to work through this.
I can go to the board meeting. I get
Yeah.
on the board.
Yeah.
Open meeting. Yeah. Okay.
And did you say that private money spent on advertising would go towards the match?
Yeah, so say we applied for 2 million, 20% of that's 400,000. We could in theory deploy 100,000 of that local match to billboards, TV or whatever in the Chicago area, to make people aware of that possibility. I think the flight from 10 or 15 years ago that went to Chicago went to Midway. This one would go to O'Hare, which is United's hub. So I think this would be a United subsidiary type of plane from SkyWest, if they are awarded the bid ultimately. But it sounds like they're probably going to be one of the strongest ones in the running. Number one, the airport board's familiar with them. They've locked in their price from a year ago at this point, and they see the potential for sure. So.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
All right, well, Cody, I appreciate you coming over and sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
I was excited when I left the meeting, and I just wanted you to come and share it with the board.
Yeah.
And, so I'll get this drafted. We'll get everybody signed and turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you all.
All right.
Have a good day.
Very good.
All right. That's got anything?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Jim Marlowe,
Yes.
Rick Gentry,
Yeah.
Matt
Sorry about that. I was thinking.
Yeah, they're a little bit better. I get them.